was raised in a small town.
Well, hello. Today we have my son Irving is a co-host, and we're going to be having Stories Worth Telling famous and fabulous stories. My mother lived to be 95. At 92, she said to me, I didn't make a difference in my life. And that's why I started Stories Worth Telling. I want people to talk about what they're passionate about and why. And I think Bruce is our guest today, Bruce Dassinger. Is that how you say your name, Bruce?
That's right.
And Bruce, you want to talk to us about Daryl's Pond in East Lyme, Connecticut. And you are originally from Alabama, if I understand correctly,
Yep.
but grew up in Florida, but have called Niantic, Connecticut, East Lyme, Connecticut your home for a few decades. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh my goodness. We're so excited to have you here, Bruce. Welcome to our show, Stories Worth Telling.
Hey Bruce, so good to see you and really excited to hear a little bit more about your story.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we first connected around some of our common passion, just mainly for the environment, and especially today since it is Earth Day.
Oh yes, we're lucky.
Maybe you could talk a little bit why and how you became so passionate about the environment.
Well, I think it starts with childhood. Let me get this straightened. There. It starts with childhood. As I said, I was born in Dothan, Alabama, and my maternal grandfather was a cotton farmer, 200 acres of cotton in Alabama. And so, can you hear okay?
I'm just going to jump around and adjust that for you.
He's fine.
Okay.
And on his farm, there was a creek running back. We say creek in the South. And I went there by myself and fished as a kid, probably 8 years old, 7 years old.
Did you use a stick or did you have a real pole?
It was a stick. I cut it from a plant, from something growing about 6 feet maybe, and I used number 8 thread from my grandmother, and I put a small bolt as a sinker, and there was a hook, I guess, that they had, and I had a cork of some kind, so I went and fished, and I caught little tiny fish.
What kind were they?
They were brim.
B-R-I-M.
B-R-E-M. B-R-E-M, or B-R-E-A-M, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a sunfish type thing.
Okay.
And so I brought it back, and my grandmother cooked it. But anyway, what I enjoyed so much was being in the woods by myself.
Of course. And I think that is just so vital. And I think it starts young, and I think like what you just said, you build on it. You remember probably the color of that thread, too.
Yeah, it was black.
It was black thread?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Number 8.
Number 8. All by yourself?
All by myself. There was no one there. No one was concerned about kids being in the forest by themselves.
Not in those days.
Yes.
Even with all of our stories of Little Red Riding Hood
yes,
and Goldilocks.
Nobody was afraid. And the only thing I was afraid of was moccasin snakes or snakes.
Oh, sure.
My parents taught us to be afraid of snakes in the South because we had diamondback rattlesnakes, we had moccasins, we had coral. We didn't have coral snakes where we were, but we had copperheads, all these snakes. And people had a fear of snakes, and that was built into me, and I probably still wouldn't hold a snake today. Anyway, but I enjoyed the woods, and I enjoyed them. We lived in a small town in North Florida, right close to I-10 now, about 55 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico.
Nice.
Which was a nice place to visit, and we did live there at one point. Anyway, so I grew up in that kind of atmosphere. The boys, I had a brother, and we roamed free in the woods. And we climbed trees, and we went from tree to tree. We were in the Tarzan days. And
did you actually swing?
We didn't swing, we just stepped, more or less, because trees were close. And we explored caves by ourselves. It was dangerous. We didn't realize the danger.
What was the age difference between you and your brother?
2.5.
Nice. He was older.
I was older.
You were the older brother. So.
He could get through the small spaces in the caves, and I got stuck once.
Well, that's a story right there.
That's a story right there. I got stuck 100 feet under the ground.
And he lived to tell the story.
And I wiggled out.
Wow.
Anyway, anyway, it's one of my life memories, obviously.
Of course, but you remember those things, and those are some of your
yeah.
happiest memories. And you see what's happening. Today's Earth Day, we just talked about that,
Yep.
and we know our planet is not being taken care of as well as we think it should be.
That's for darn sure.
And that was one of the interesting things, Bruce, that you started to tell me a little bit about 300 acres currently in East Lyme, Connecticut, that you're working really hard on to try and make sure that we take care of the way we should take care of.
Right. It's a 300-acre property. 200 acres are under conservation easement, and those won't be impacted by what the town is proposing to do. The Parks and Rec Commission is proposing putting in disc golf, which you may not know what is, and mountain bike. It's called a pump track, which is referring to the way of riding the bike. They're more active, so-called passive sports.
So currently there's 200 acres already preserved.
Right.
And right now we're talking about this additional 100 acres,
Yes.
what to do with it. And Parks and Rec is talking about disc golf or other things.
Yes, right. And there are habitats there now. There is a habitat there which is called Shrubland Young Forest Habitat. I have a brochure on that. And that is home of New England cottontail rabbits, for one thing. They're documented there, and their places are documented.
And that's a unique setting for them.
It's a unique setting, and they require that setting. Whereas eastern cottontails, which were imported from the Midwest back when cottontails expired due to shooting and hunting, and the New England cottontail was our native species. And so eastern cottontails could be near the forest or in the forest, but New England cottontails, because of their different kind of rabbit, and they're easily predated, don't have as big of eyes to see predators, they need impenetrable thickets, briar patches is a common word, to live, to escape predators. The predators can't get in. The New England cottontails and certain types of birds, which are called shrubland birds, live there, and they also require that kind of habitat.
So if we did something that changed that habitat, it could be pretty detrimental
Right.
for all these animals.
If you break it up by paths too close together, or if you break it up with activity like mountain bikes or frequent human activity, people can walk in areas like that without disturbing, and hike, but frequent activity, noise, all that sort of stuff is inhibitory to those birds and animals and the rabbit being there.
And how are we deciding as a community what to do with this 100 acres?
Well, it's in the Board of Selectmen of Town of East Lyme has tasked the Parks and Recreation Commission to recommend uses for that property. Of course, Parks and Recreation, their community is mainly by sports-minded people, more active sports. They have the ball fields, and this was started in Parks and Rec because people in the north part of town in East Lyme requested facilities like down at Bride Brook, which are playing fields and things like that. Well, this property will not be turned into that kind of activity, but it is suggested for the activities that I mentioned to you, including a dog park. A fenced-in dog park where dogs and people can socialize. So currently people who use that, and they walk their dogs there, they want it to stay as is. They're nearby neighbors. They don't want noise, disturbance, partying, anything like that.
You received some feedback from
I
this.
certainly
You
did.
saw some data.
I talked to people, for instance, at Daryl Ridge, some people there who were on the road. I'll talk about surveys in a minute that Parks and Rec are doing, but I left that information and told them about the activities planned there. And they were very much against that because it would disturb their tranquility. They think it might impact the pond there, which is a pristine pond. It hasn't been impacted with drainage of fertilizers and things like that. It polluted to grow like Patagonia Pond or Lake and Gorton Pond. Those are greatly impacted, and the aquatic plants grow and take over.
And I imagine a lot of people moved into this neighborhood, one of the nicest in town right
Yes.
now, almost because of this pristine nature that you're describing.
Exactly.
How many people, Bruce, are in this neighborhood? Are you aware of that? Do you have numbers to
Well,
that?
there are the numbers. I've talked to people that adjoin it on the south, Village Drive. I've talked to people on Mustawi Road, which is the access point for this property. And I've talked to 2 households there and one person who uses it who walks there from his own home, and they all feel the same way. How many? I don't know how many houses are on Daryl Ridge. You're better at that than I am. They're just about all built now. I don't know if all the lots are built, but in Darrow's not court, but Darrow's court off that, there are probably 15, 20 houses, would you think? I'm not sure, on both sides of the road. 20 houses or so at least. But all together, there are many houses that border on the property, both on Village Drive, Mustawi Road, some right adjacent to the property.
So this is Goodwin Trail, and we have had the pleasure of hiking Goodwin Trail.
Yes,
and
that's the trailhead.
Right, and that's the trailhead. And that's just such a beautiful piece of property that I know people have worked tenaciously to make this, to create this, to preserve it.
Art Carlson is the originator of that.
Yep.
And he's head of the Natural Resources Commission of the town, Conservation Natural Resources. And
Go ahead.
But he started that connection. He was very much interested in that trail and putting it through and connecting up with other trail systems that go all the way to Route 82.
Yeah, it's an amazing
all
trail.
the way to Salmon River, really, way on the other side. And so, and I see hikers there who are really enjoying the hiking. I see bird watchers who really enjoy the current thicket birds or the shrubland birds and other birds there. I can talk about the birds, but anyway, those people there want to keep it as is. Also, Mustawi Road is a very, very narrow and curvy road. So that would increase traffic there, people being there all at one time, if you have these active, passive sports, because they're competitive. So it would attract numbers of people there at the same time, rather than...
I understand your concern, Bruce, and I applaud you for your efforts of trying to preserve this area. I'm wondering if you can think of something that might be somewhat of a compromise, that 100 acres, is there something that could be done with it? That
Yes, I think so. There's a forested part of that property. There's not this shrub part of the property, and that's about 50 acres. If those activities were carried out or were built there, that would not impact the other part, which is the shrubland part. That is also about 50 acres. So if it's divided up forest land versus shrubland, it would be the best outcome.
Okay. And I think people need to know this, because I think that if you understand the intensity and the severity, I mean, we don't want to lose those rabbits, and we don't want to lose those birds that you referred to, the shrubland birds. We want them to be able to have a pristine and safe environment. And people can do quiet sports. Being athletic and being active doesn't mean that it has to be loud, and doesn't mean that it has to be a lot of people in a huge arena kind of thing.
You could actively hike and jog, whatever. You could do those activities, but not a crowd of people at the same time. So it wouldn't impact, because they would be conversing with each other, and they wouldn't be actively doing something. They would be conversing. A group of them together would make more noise and impact more than just single individuals.
I'm wondering, is there any signage up that says that this is a New England cottontail rabbit preserve?
There's nothing. There's a kiosk there. It mentions birds that are there, but it doesn't go into New England cottontail. It may, but you have to go to that kiosk to see that. There is a kiosk. I don't know if it's maintained actively or not, but there's a kiosk there. It has to do with the trail itself, the Goodwin Trail, but is a kiosk. But it's not about necessarily the whole property.
I'm just thinking how Harkness has signage that this is a nesting area. I don't remember if it's for ospreys or what, but there's a nesting area, you know, a preserve. Don't bring your dogs through here during certain months. I wonder if something like that would be an idea that we could bring forth.
I think so. Well, there is the nearing part of the property at Harkness towards Goshen Cove, or whatever it is, which is to the west side there, where Seaside used to be. That is more of a nature bird preserve in there, because they are the same type of habitat thickets, and plus there's an observation place there to look out on the cove, which is tidal. Seabirds or wading birds come in, and there's nesting in there especially. So I think that would be where they would have it. There's the Nearing Trail, or that part is called, based, who is a colleague of Goodwin's, Richard Goodwin's, at Conn College. He was a preservationist too, and a conservationist, and global warming was one of his things too, even. So there's a big plaque there, William Nearing, whatever the place is called.
Well, I like that idea, because I think it's kind of a compromise and a little bit of a win-win is what I'm thinking.
Yes.
If we were to do something that could be like a platform
I think so.
for observation, and if people could go and see and observe, like with cameras from a distance kind of thing, and look, or if there was a live camera where people could actually see them developing their habitat and the birth of new ones and all of that. So that just might be an alternative, is what I'm thinking.
In spring, these birds that I'm talking about are migratory. And so they will be back in late May, in middle May, starting next month, and also June. Anyway, they come in and they start setting up nesting territories, and then they sing. The males sing, and except for cowbirds, the females sing, I think. But anyway, no, the males sing. Sorry. And
the males don't sing, but the females do?
No. The females, they're multitaskers.
Okay.
And you've been working with Connecticut College and other academics who have a deep research in this area. Is that right?
Yes. And talking about the signs, though, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been working with Robert Askins, who's a retired professor emeritus from Conn College, and who has surveyed the area and will survey the area. Right now, during last year and this year, it's been extended for a year. The state of Connecticut is doing a breeding bird atlas, which is all the breeding birds in the state of Connecticut.
Wow.
And how many there are. And it's broken down into small areas. Like the town of Montville is broken up into 6 areas. Town of Niantic or East Lyme is broken up into areas which extend to the shore, and the outer islands, small islands nearby, where gulls and other birds, oyster catchers nest, all those kind of birds. So that's being done all over the state right now.
Are they vulnerable, Bruce? Are some of these animals?
Oh yes, brown thrasher, for instance, is on the state. What's it called?
Endangered or
It's
watched?
not it's in that series. It's called Threatened. There's
list.
different stages of extinction and being near extinction. That's the highest, which is I forget what it's called, but anyway, there's stages.
Right.
And that could be a whole opportunity, kind of what you're saying, connected to Connecticut College, maybe the Ecology Club at East Lyme High School, and really make it a great community learning center.
There are people actively birding that now. There's a site online called eBird. It's run out of the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, which is a very active group, and people post their sightings, hearings, whatever, their findings of bird life all over the world, especially all over the country, every day. So there are people going to Daryl Pond almost every day now. I have several friends who are actively doing that and posting their findings. In fact, I was there and with a friend last Friday night, and we heard 4 woodcock going through their courtship ritual, and we heard 1 passerby whippoorwill.
Nice.
Which they have been nested there before, been in that territory, but we think this one was just passing through since it's very early for them, so going somewhere else. But now's the time they're coming in, and they're singing very quiet, whippoorwill, whippoorwill, whippoorwill. They sing very loud. They keep you up at night, in fact.
Well, that's beautiful, though. I was with my friend Sally and Norm Bender. You probably know the Benders, and
I've met him.
they're part of this eBird
Oh,
process.
they are. Okay.
And he was able to do a bird impersonation for me. Do you
Oh,
have
yeah.
do you have a bird that you can?
Several.
Well, come on, don't hold back. Let me see. What's one of your?
Okay, here's barred owl. Hoo, 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 hoo. Hoo, 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 hoo. Barred owl.
Okay, that's
White-throated sparrow. The white-throated sparrow has to learn its song every year anew.
really. Why is that?
That's just the way the brain works for them.
Oh, interesting.
And so they initially in the season, a new breeder, a male, will sing off key. Instead of a perfect interval, he'll be kind of flat or sharp.
Oh my gosh! So he has to get music lessons every single
Well,
year.
his brain has to teach him. I don't know how it works.
Oh, that's great.
But anyway,
When I was a little girl, I used to sit in my backyard, and sometimes I'd hear a bird, and I'd say, "Who's whistling at me?" Like,
Yeah, right.
where's that coming from?
and this is chickadee. Chickadee.
There you go. And that's how they get their names sometimes.
Yeah, but, and anyway, there's a lot people that watch birds routinely every day. They go more by sound incidentally than they do by sight because they get up at 5:30 before sunrise. The best birding time for reading birds is 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes after sunrise. That's when more are actively singing. And they quit singing at midday or 10 o'clock or something like that, but you get more singers then. So people go out at that time if they really want to get the numbers of birds and identify. So they go by sound. And people learn all these sounds. There's CDs, records, recordings. Cornell has a site called All About Birds. And you can go hear all the sounds of all the birds and see all the birds on that website.
So it seems to me that we have such a sanctuary that is so worth preserving and saving. And I think it just behooves us to take this to the front of the list and say, this should not be developed because this needs to happen. You have a pamphlet you want to show us?
Well, you have the Young Forest Project, which is the same as Shrubland Project. It talks all about the birds there. There's indigo bunting.
Nice.
It's there. That's not threatened. Brown thrasher is threatened. Field sparrow is threatened, but you don't think that. And field sparrows are there, and they nest there. But anyway, there's that, plus there's da-da-da-da.
You know, we're looking for projects for the summer, and there's going to be ESSER grant money available, and I'm wondering if this would fall into
Oh, yes.
something of this category where we could have a group that would kind of get behind this and
think
put up
so.
some signage, maybe put up some kind of an observatory with cameras and...
Yeah, I think a very good idea is for the people around there to form a nonprofit organization like Friends of Oswegatchie Hills, which maintains all the trails in Oswegatchie Hills, has educational projects there, has walks of various interests, both from botany standpoint, mushrooms, mycology, lichens and ferns, and all those kinds of ecological studies or interests. Those people can all go. Birds, we're doing trail days coming up June the 5th and 6th in the town of East Lyme, and there's going to be walks in Oswegatchie Hills and Daryl Pond, bird walks.
So we should all plan to mark our calendar.
And you have to register for that when the registration comes up at Parks and Rec, because of COVID, they're limiting the numbers.
And is there a connection to the land trust with all this?
No.
No
Well,
relation.
the land trust is involved because Art Carlson is a member of the land trust. He's also so they don't have the control of this property. So they've done some things to the hill, and they're interested more in acquiring land rather than providing access to land and educational activities.
And what you said, this 100 acres is currently under the purview of Parks and Rec.
It's for municipal use, but Parks and Rec has been tasked to come up with uses, and they will probably be turned over to them for management, probably.
So we need to probably get the word out for one thing, be in touch with Parks and Rec to tell them what we have some ideas too, and to formulate some really good ideas and plans so that it doesn't go awry.
Right.
And it's okay if it goes into the forest area, from what I understand, but not into the shrub area.
Right.
So development in the right sense of the word development, thoughtful, careful development.
I had something. Where's my piece of paper? Excuse me for stepping off camera.
Well, that's okay. So we just have a couple of minutes left, so
Okay, I want to just read what a quotation. Where's my? I'd like to read a quotation by what's his name?
He needs his mic, we can't.
Okay. Anyway.
do you need help putting it
A
on?
famous conservationist. I'll just hold it.
It should be about this far.
I'll just hold it like that. How's that?
Perfect.
This is, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. We own it. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. That was by Leopold, I forget his name. I just don't have it here, but anyway, it's from a Sand County Almanac. He wrote that book. He was a forester at the University of Wisconsin, and that's where I studied, in fact, University of Wisconsin. And so, anyway, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Don't think of it as a commodity that you own to use and to develop. Think of it as something that you want to save to enjoy.
Well, and I think the more people respect it and admire it and understand its vulnerability and all of the animals that are being threatened, the better we will be. So I think us having this opportunity to speak with you today has been such a gift. So we thank you for that. Irving,
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, for bringing up this important issue. And it sounds like the next steps are that there'll be a commission that you're part of for the town to help move this forward.
There's a committee in Parks and Rec. And they're trying to include people from various interest groups and backgrounds to be on this committee, which is a good thing. And they want to take it slow. They want to do it right, etc. So there's hope there that this property will be maintained. Because it is threatened, it is scarce in the state. And so there's not much property like this left. It's either being developed or the trees are growing back up to mature forest.
Exactly, and it connects everything back to the town as well, that if we preserve our land in the right way, it helps to increase property values, it helps to improve the schools, all these connections. So it's a really important topic, and we're really so grateful that you're so passionate and dedicating time to do this in the community, Bruce.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we could do to help outside of kind of what we highlighted, to help get the word out? How can people find out more about you and your work?
I don't know. I don't have a website. I'm going to be on this committee, and the hearings or the committee meetings may be online. I don't know how they be operated. I intend to, together with Lisa Wally, who's the state coordinator for New England Cottontail, who's working very hard to preserve this species. We're together on the Planning Commission just this last week, or a week ago, and I hope to get us on the Parks and Rec Commission meetings to present there. Also, bringing more people together, especially neighbors, will make a big difference, I think.
Well, we'll do what we can, and we thank you for the opportunity to be able to hear what is so important and valuable that we need to respect and preserve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Bruce.